Emulation has come such a long way in just the last 5 to 10 years. I can remember being blown away the first time I learned that I could play my favorite retro games on my old crappy laptop. And now there's a seemingly endless supply of these little handheld emulators that do an amazing job of playing all of the classics a lot of us grew up with. But what's really the best way to play your emulators? You know, there's a saying in photography that the best camera is the one that you have with you. Well, maybe the same can be said for emulation. Video game emulation on the iPhone is not a new thing. It's certainly not new for Android, as you can find plenty of quality emulators right on the Google Play Store. I can remember having to jailbreak my iPhones back in the day to install emulators such as GBA4 iOS. And eventually it did get a little easier and you could just sideload these apps without having to jailbreak, but thankfully it's even easier than that now. Delta is the name of the go-to emulator on iOS these days, and thankfully it can be installed without jailbreaking your device. There are plenty of great installation guides already on YouTube, so I won't get into any of that, but basically all you will need is either a PC or a Mac. Delta has actually been around for a while now. It first released in 2017 and was developed by Riley Tested, who also developed GBA4 iOS. The most notable difference between the two is that GBA4 iOS was a Game Boy and Game Boy Advance emulator, while Delta covers a range of Nintendo consoles. You can find everything from NES to DS here. Delta has most of the features that you would look for in an emulator these days, like save states and even cheat codes, but how does it perform? Let's start with the NES. Now, I expected the NES to be a quick test with absolutely no issues whatsoever, but that wasn't the case. I noticed while testing Kirby's Adventure that the frames would tank if there were a lot of enemies on screen. This happened on multiple levels too, so it wasn't an isolated incident. I would also get some weird effects on the sides of the screen when playing games like Super Mario Bros. 3, especially if I was moving quickly in one direction. You can see objects on the right side of the screen are green as they load in. I wanted to see if this was an issue with Delta or just a byproduct of NES emulation in general, so I also tested these games on my Miyoo Mini Plus and had very similar results. I definitely still saw the same issues with the screen when moving too fast in one direction, and the drop frames I experienced were present as well, although they weren't as bad. Some of these issues could be attributed to the specific ROMs that I'm using too, so that's something to keep in mind. I don't think that any of these minor issues should stop you from playing NES games on Delta, by the way. I would say the overall experience was very positive. A lot of NES games can be pretty challenging. I don't even mean challenging to emulate, the games are just hard. Overall, they are much less forgiving than Super Nintendo games, so trying to play with the touchscreen just adds an extra layer of difficulty. But to give credit where credit is due, the touchscreen controls are actually pretty good. I think touchscreen controls feel so strange because you have to lift your finger each time you need to press a button. On a physical controller, you really only lift your finger when switching to a different button. If your finger is already on the button you need to press, you just press it. The fact that you can't actually feel the buttons doesn't help either. Thankfully, Delta has controller support across the board. You can use a Bluetooth controller like this 8BitDo Pro 2, and even a controller that connects directly to your iPhone like the Backbone. The Backbone has quickly become my favorite way to play games on my iPhone. Pokemon fans will be happy to learn that Game Boy and Game Boy Color games run beautifully on Delta. Pokemon fans will also be happy to learn that Delta has a speed up feature, which will save you a lot of time and sanity when it comes to grindy games like this. There's currently no way to adjust how fast the speed up is, so I hope to see that added to a future version. I tested a handful of Game Boy games and didn't find a single issue with any of them. Delta does a great job of making the games look nice and sharp even though the games are being displayed on a larger screen. I didn't notice any blurriness around the edges of the pixels. The frame rate is great, although I can't give you a specific number because there's no way to display the FPS within Delta. I would like to have the option to see frames in one of the corners of the screen, especially since you get these black bars called pillar boxing when playing in landscape. A lot of Game Boy games are simple enough that the touchscreen controls will work fine, but there are some that will really benefit from having a physical controller. It comes down to reaction time and whether or not pressing the wrong button or not pressing a button at all will make or break your play session. Delta lets you change the controller skin you're using too. I changed the default Game Boy skin to this clear purple that I found online. Just Google Delta iOS skins and you'll find plenty of options. You'll also find a very positive experience when emulating Game Boy Advance and Super Nintendo games. They're just as smooth as Game Boy and Game Boy Color games and also have crisp pixels, so you don't have to deal with any blurriness. I tested a bunch of games here for both of these consoles and again found no issues. Yoshi's Island is the most difficult SNES game to emulate and it runs just fine on Delta. Star Fox is another graphically intensive game for the SNES, and that worked great too. I also wanted to test Samurai Showdown, not only because I have a lot of nostalgia for that game, but also because I wanted to test the emulator's responsiveness to inputs. Again, it all ran just fine. I didn't notice any input lag. I'm just bad at fighting games. I am the input lag. As expected, Game Boy Advance games run great. They usually do on emulators. I didn't find a single issue with any of the games I tested. If GBA games are your thing, Delta is a great way to have your entire library on you at all times. The reason I'm bringing up Game Boy Advance and Super Nintendo together is because for me, this is where we reach a point in emulation where a physical controller makes a vast difference in your gameplay. Of course, you can use the touchscreen if you prefer, or just don't have a choice, but it's difficult to use the L and R buttons. Take for example the Metroid games, where you use the R button to aim diagonally. It's just not easy to do with touchscreen controls. It's also easy to press the wrong button, or completely miss your button press altogether because of how many buttons need to be crammed into such a small space. It is easier to use in landscape though. I played through a good chunk of Metroid Zero Mission using the touchscreen and landscape just to see how well I could do. And while it wasn't nearly as fluid as using a physical controller, I actually didn't think it was that bad. You'll need to use your index fingers to hit the L and R buttons, which makes holding your phone feel a little weird, but it can be done. All this is no fault to Delta, by the way, it's just the nature of touchscreen controls. Let's talk about some of the heavier emulation that Delta is capable of. Nintendo 64. I wanted to start off with something that I thought would run pretty easily. Diddy Kong Racing. The game actually does run very well, but I had an issue with some of the text being replaced with black squares. This isn't really a big deal since it doesn't affect gameplay, but I felt like I should mention it. Also experienced this with GoldenEye, but only at the file select screen on these folders. No other games that I tested have this issue with text, but I did get a similar issue when playing Super Smash Bros. On some of the textures. Banjo-Kazooie also had some strange graphical issues with textures that cause things to look black at certain angles and distances. Kirby and the Crystal Shards would sometimes have some glitches in the sky. I wouldn't let any of these minor graphical issues keep you from playing N64 games on Delta. They're really just a minor inconvenience that won't hinder your experience that much. GoldenEye ran very well on Delta. But what I found interesting is that the game would run a lot smoother when I was in smaller spaces with not much on the screen for the game to load. The FPS doesn't seem to be locked, and again, this is when I really wish I could see the frame rate somewhere on the screen to get a better idea of performance. I'm pretty sure this same thing happens on an actual N64. In fact, a common speedrun tactic for N64 games is to look straight up or down so the console has less to load, increasing the FPS. I played a lot of Super Mario 64 and didn't find a single issue with performance. I even used the touchscreen for a lot of my playtime and was surprised by how quickly I was able to get the hang of controlling Mario. The default layout for the controls work very well. The Z button is needed pretty often for Mario's jumps, and since it's right above the A button, long jumping and ground pounding felt pretty fluid. On the flip side, I've found it pretty difficult to control Link in Ocarina of Time. The movements feel like they need to be more precise, so I usually stuck to using the backbone when playing this one. It may be because you can't make Link jump like you can with Mario, but it's hard to describe. Overall, N64 games run very well, definitely give it a shot. The last console currently available on Delta is the DS. The bottom DS screen works with the iPhone's touchscreen, which is great. Also, the iPhone is a great way to play the DS games when using it in portrait because the screens are in the correct orientation. My only complaint is that it's a little difficult to hold right on the D-pad and also press the Y button. My thumbs would get in each other's way. The individual screens get a lot smaller when switching to landscape, and when using a controller in landscape, the Face ID cutout blocks out part of your top screen, which is unfortunate. I don't see any options in the settings to change the position of the screens. I would rather have the bottom screen slightly smaller and move to the left a little to get the top screen away from the cutout. New Super Mario Bros. Works like a charm. This is primarily where I notice the issue of the controls being a little tight. It's a little tricky to get Mario to jump while you're running, which is a pretty critical thing in Mario games. It's also a pretty big pain to wall jump. Animal Crossing Wild Worlds is a great game to play on Delta. I found that the touch controls worked well for this game since it's slow paced. The DS Pokemon games are another great example of a great DS game for Delta. The speed up feature is almost necessary because of how slow paced Heart Gold and Soul Silver are. Unfortunately, not every DS game is playable using the touchscreen in my opinion. In Metroid Prime Hunters, you control your direction with the DS's touchscreen, move with the D-pad, and shoot with the L button. I can't find a way to make this work. I can either move and shoot or change my direction and shoot, which causes me to stand in one place while I get shot. It's a little more manageable with the Backbone controller, but you still have to use the bottom DS screen for directional inputs. You're not able to use the right joystick. The game runs very well though. I didn't notice any drop frames throughout my playthrough. Delta even lets you use your iPhone's microphone to play DS games, so you can fire up Nintendogs if you want to. Remember Nintendogs?
Sit. Good job. This is fun.
You can also install Delta on an iPad, but from what I can tell, it's just a stretched out version of the iPhone app. I couldn't find a version specific to the iPad. The games all work great here as well, of course, but you're going to want to use a Bluetooth controller. Using touchscreen controls on an iPad is going to get old and heavy fast. All of my iPhone testing was done on an iPhone 13 Pro, which isn't the latest or fastest iPhone, but it's still pretty good. I wanted to see how Delta would run on an older device, so I also installed it on an old iPhone 7 that I keep around. I only tested a couple of games, but from what I can tell, Delta is going to run great on any supported device. The Delta website shows devices running even iOS 9 should be compatible. I'm super happy with how well Delta runs on my iPhone, especially considering I didn't even need to jailbreak it to install it. I would love to see more consoles added in future updates like maybe PS1 and PSP. I shouldn't be surprised that the emulators run as well as they do given the graphical intensity of a lot of iPhone games these days, but I definitely have to give credit to the developer Riley as well for creating such a great application. Are you already using Delta on your phone, or is this the first time that you're hearing about it? Let me know in the comments down below. An easy and free way to support this channel is to just simply subscribe and maybe share this video with a friend that would like to play some cool retro games on their phone. You can follow me on my social media here if you're into that sort of thing, and I'll catch you on the next one.